Good afternoon. Looks like we are live now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's joint webinar hosted by Unit of Measure and Stibo Systems. I'm delighted you could join us today for this fireside chat on keep your PDF automatically updated and in sync with your STEP publisher. Many teams spend hours manually updating product documentation when product data changes. During this session, we will discuss on how STEP Publisher can automatically regenerate impacted documents and keep every PDF version aligned with your approved data, helping you reduce rework, avoid inconsistencies, and move faster. I'm delighted to have joining with us Martin Kelsen, CEO of Unit of Measure, who helps organizations get the most of their Stibo Systems STEP PIM MDM investment, and René Utzpra, EMEA Director, Channel and Alliances at Stibo Systems. Together, they will talk through how the automation works, share practical use cases and customer impact, and give a preview of Mirix PDF on demand. You can ask your question through the Q&A section, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the fireside chat. Let's get started. So over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Guillaume, and welcome everyone. And thank you for joining today's session on PDF and print automation with STEP Publisher. As Guillaume said, I'm René Hoekstra, Director of Channel and Alliances for EMEA at Stibo Systems. And I have the pleasure of hosting Martin Kelsen from Unit of Measure, a long-time implementation partner of Stibo, and actually a long-time colleague before that as well. Before he went independent in 2013, about 13 years ago now, I would say. So Martin, welcome. And to kick us off, can you set the scene for what we're doing today?
Yes, thanks, René, and thank you everyone for joining. Let me start with a simple observation. Companies using STEP Publisher already had the data and the templates to produce PDFs, but some of these companies are still producing those PDFs within quite manual workflows, and that creates a production barrier. So you only create the documents you absolutely have to because it's time-consuming to do more. So what we're talking about today is about removing that barrier and how that doesn't just save time, but it opens the door to entirely new ways of using PDFs across your business.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the PDF automation capabilities built into STEP Publisher and what the potential is for those customers that are not already taking full advantage of this. But Martin, I believe you have quite a story about how you discovered this functionality yourself, right?
Yeah, I do. I'd like to tell you how I first learned that the PDF automation capabilities in STEP Publisher got added as a standard feature. I was working with a global manufacturer where we had already implemented, InDesign templates to support the datasheets creation from STEP using STEP Publisher, and this was in itself a major step up from the very manual production of datasheets that product managers had been doing in Word and sometimes PowerPoint before they implemented STEP. But there was still a pain point. To produce a datasheet for a product from STEP, the product manager had to go into the Proof View tab in the Web UI, select the correct template and version, generate the PDF, save it to the computer, rename the file according to the file naming convention, upload it to STEP, and link it to the product. And since each datasheet was available in multiple languages, they would have to repeat this process for each language. And for every future content update, the product manager had to go through, the whole process again. So despite the clear advantages of publishing datasheets straight from your trusted product data in STEP, this was a pretty painful process for the users. So we started exploring a customization with Stibo Systems to automate this process. But due to other project priorities, that dialogue was paused for a few months. And then the cool thing was that when we came back a few months later, Stibo told us that this customization was no longer needed because the functionality had been added as a standard feature in STEP Publisher. That was really something. We came back with an approved budget and ready to go, but now what we expected to build as a custom solution was now becoming available out of the box. But I was surprised by how little coverage this feature got when it was released. It was just casually mentioned in the release notes, among many other features. And to me, it was such a significant upgrade to the whole STEP publisher component, but there was no fuss made about it. So now that I've had the chance to implement the PDF automation, it's one of my favorite features of STEP, and I'd like to contribute to getting the word out in case there are any organizations using STEP that are not aware of this feature. It could be a very low-hanging fruit to greatly improve the way you work with PDF creation in your organization. And if you're not already using STEP Publisher, but maybe considering it, I would say that the automation feature easily doubles the value that you can get from this component. So if people are on the fence about whether to invest in STEP Publisher or not, this could perhaps be the deciding factor. Yeah.
Okay. So actually what you're saying is getting it from a manual, tedious process into a more automation is a key thing that is now part of the standard functionality, which is great. So many of our customers use STEP Publisher to produce data sheets, price lists, and other collateral. But today we're talking about the automation layer in STEP Publisher that we think deserves more attention. Can you walk me through what that looks like in practice, please?
Yes, absolutely. So you can say now the STEP Publisher has two sides. There's the original production side, building templates and generating PDFs from STEP data. And most customers know that part well. But now there's also the automation side that was introduced and even improved over the past few STEP releases. And that's what we are focusing on today. And it's important to be clear here, generating PDFs from STEP is not new. What's new is that the STEP Publisher can now automatically generate the PDFs when a new product is approved and regenerate those PDFs whenever the data changes in the future. And that shift from manual generation to event-driven automation is really what removes the production bottleneck. STEP already knows when product data changes, whether it's a price update, a new image, an approved description, and STEP Publisher can listen to those events and automatically regenerate the affected PDFs. So instead of someone manually triggering updates across products and languages, STEP keeps everything in sync without the need for any human intervention. And many STEP customers have already solved product data governance, but not document production. PDF creation is still a manual process in many organizations, and that creates a barrier. And that barrier doesn't just cost time, it also limits how many PDFs you produce or how many use cases that make sense for you to consider PDFs for in the first place. So once you remove that barrier of production effort, that conversation changes completely.
And I guess it ties into the approval workflows that customers are already using, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the key points. You're not generating PDFs on every tiny edit. You tie it to your existing governance. A product gets approved, the PDF regenerates. A price change passes review, the price list updates. The automation respects the same business rules you already defined. You decide what kind of changes that should trigger PDF refresh and when in your workflow it should take place. And this means that the PDF becomes a governed output, just like your e-commerce feed or your syndication channel. It's not a side process anymore. It's part of the data flow. And yes, you save time by removing manual work, but you also radically lower the mental barrier of, is it worth creating PDFs for this or that purpose? And you start to see new production communication opportunities. So you can say you can sum up the business impact of PDF automation as you eliminate manual PDF production work across teams. You ensure that the pool of PDFs generated from STEP are always generated from current product data, and thereby you reduce the risk of outdated documents being shared. You accelerate the time to market. PDFs are ready whenever the products are. You remove the barrier to scaling PDF outputs across products, languages, markets, and to enable new use cases where previously it was not feasible due to the manual effort involved.
I get it. So the data sheets, they are really interesting because they touch so many stakeholders like sales, channel partners, marketing. You mentioned earlier that this customer you worked with was already using STEP Publisher to produce data sheets, but the manual process was still a bottleneck. Can you take us a bit deeper into what you actually implemented, Martin?
Yes, sure. So to quickly recap, this was a multi-brand manufacturer doing data sheets across several business areas and multiple languages. And they experienced the real pain keeping their data sheets up to date every time a piece of content used in the PDF changed. As I described earlier, they went through the process to generate, save, rename, upload, link, and repeat for every language. And this was just for the day-to-day changes, but also once in a while, they would implement changes that affected all PDFs. For instance, information mentioned in the document footer, or changes to commonly used logos, or similar changes that affected many products. Those cases were treated as small production projects because it was not feasible for users to implement such global changes. So that took a lot of time away for the brand marketing team, to plan, execute, inspect, and so on. And that's why we set out to automate the whole process.
Okay.
And if you put some numbers on it, it becomes very clear. In the end-to-end process for updating, let's say that takes, for updating one datasheet, let's say that takes 5 minutes, and you have 6 languages. That's easily 30 minutes for one product update. Let's just say you have 10,000 product updates per year. That's 5,000 hours of manual work just to keep documents up to date. And of course, those numbers will be different for every organization, but the conclusion is that in most cases, it's just not scalable, and it's not a good use of skilled people's time. So with the new automation feature in STEP Publisher, we were able to tie the PDF generation directly to the approval workflow in STEP. So when a new product reaches approved for publication status in the workflow, meaning the data, the images, the descriptions have all passed review, the STEP Publisher generates a fresh datasheet PDF that gets published to the website along with the product data itself. So the datasheet is effectively ready at the same moment the product is ready, and not days later. So when something changes later, a spec update, a new primary image, a revised description, and it goes through approval again, the datasheet regenerates, always up to date, and it, of course, also handles all the language versions automatically too, and no repeating the process for each language. And in fact, some attributes in their system, that were in the PDFs, they originally came from the ERP system and didn't even need approval in STEP. And this means that when STEP receives changes to these specific attributes from ERP, the new datasheet PDFs automatically gets generated without any STEP users being involved at all. So and also, the STEP Publisher automatically saves all the generated PDFs in a classification structure very neatly, where it's super easy to browse to any datasheet you're looking for, creating a single location where the latest approved version is always available without the need for anyone to manage the file upload or making sure everything is saved to the right folder.
That sounds like a great project, Martin. So one question that pops up into my mind is, how did the marketing team react? Because sometimes they can be a bit protective of their templates and design control.
Yes, but in this setup, the marketing still owns all the templates and designs. There's no need to touch, the existing templates, so nothing changes there. The only thing that changes is the repetitive production work that goes away. When they no longer need to generate or regenerate documents manually when data changes, and that really removed the major bottleneck without taking away control. So yeah, you say the immediate benefit that the product managers and market teams was that they saved a lot of time. But what I found interesting also is that what happened a little while after the implementation, because once the effort of producing PDFs drops to close to zero, the organization starts to think differently. Instead of limiting themselves to a small set of documents, they could now start to expand the use of datasheets or other types of publications, introducing new variations and support more markets and channels without increasing the workload. And to me, that was a great example of how working smarter and freeing up time leads to getting more done and extending the use cases for your product marketing and communications.
So that sounds like a great case and great results, Martin. So we know now that datasheets is a mainstream application for STEP Publisher. But there are so many other use cases for this, and I know that you've implemented PDF automation from STEP in a completely different area as well. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, this was at a retail customer, selling thousands of SKUs across multiple stores, and every product on their shelves had a label with product name, SKU number, barcode, and the price. So when the price changes in the ERP system, that label needs to be replaced, in every store where it's sold. So before the automation, updating prices was a multi-step manual process involving Excel sheets, emails going out to all the stores, someone managing the printing locally and figuring out where in the store each price label should go. So with many steps in the process involving humans, the process was slow and error prone. Wrong prices on the shelves, products getting printed in the wrong size of label, stores printing yesterday's version because the email got buried, and so on. All the mix-ups that happens in manual processes. So what we implemented there was quite simple. The price updates from ERP flow to STEP. The STEP detects the change, identifies which stores are carrying these products, and automatically generates the correct label PDFs and sends them to the relevant printers in the stores. No, manual coordination, no emails, no local interpretation. And the same thing happens when a new product is introduced in STEP, and it passes validation. STEP Publisher automatically generates the shelf edge label PDF. The stores receives the correct label for the new product with no one in the head office touching it. And the templates they handle all the formatting rules, the font sizes, the barcode placement, and so on. And everything, all the data governed in STEP. The store just checks the local printer in the store area for the latest update labels in the morning.
Okay, so what was the operational impact then of this change?
Well, when you remove the human from repetitive tasks, you also remove the human errors that come with it, and you remove the overhead that comes with it. So the speed, improved too. The staff could simply pick up the ready-made labels for the day in the local department printer, and thereby you've removed several steps where the process could stall for whatever reason, and the prices could be updated quickly across the entire store. But also from an IT perspective, the integration was super clean. The ERP to STEP integration was already in place. We just extended the output side to include the automated label generation. No new middleware, no separate label system. So to wrap this up, what we have covered here are two, say, quite different scenarios. The brand data sheets and the retail shelf edge labels. But the principle is the same. STEP already has the data, the governance, the approval logic. STEP Publisher just turns that into automated, always current PDFs.
So Martin, from the examples you've shared, it's clear there's real value here. What are the key use cases where you see PDF automation making the biggest difference for STEP customers?
Yeah, well, obviously the most common one is the data sheets. That's the bread and butter, right? But beyond that, you also got price lists, compliance documentation, packaging labels, the shelf edge labels that we talked about before, in-store and point of sales materials. The common thread is anywhere you have product data in STEP that needs to leave the system as a formatted document. And as I have alluded to earlier, the value doesn't just scale with volume. It changes behavior. When producing PDFs, is manual, it limits your capacity of how many you can create. When it's automated, that limitation disappears, and that's when new use cases start to emerge. For example, companies start creating market-specific data sheets instead of one global version. Sales teams can generate customer-ready PDFs instead of relying on generic material. Marketing can create campaign-specific documents that they wouldn't have prioritized before. And even internally, you start using PDFs for operational processes, not just external communication. And the compounding effect of all these additional use cases makes the value expand over time and beyond simple time savings.
So can I ask a bit of a nasty question, Martin, as well? So why do you think PDF still matters? Digital channels, web portals have dominated for so many years now. Is there really still a place for PDF output from STEP?
Well, I think more than people expect. PDF is still the go-to format when accuracy matters. When layout control matters, and when information needs to be shared outside your system. Sales teams send PDFs to customers every day. Distributors expect data sheets in PDF format, and in many industries, compliance documentation must be delivered in a fixed document. And this may be stating the obvious, but it's important to keep in mind that PDFs doesn't just necessarily mean print. Most PDFs are consumed digitally, but in a format where you control the experience completely. You control the layout, the branding, how complex data like specifications and tables are presented. So for many organizations, PDF is still a critical channel, and the issue is not the format. The issue is the effort required to produce it.
I get it, and I see what you're saying. That there is still a big market and a big usage of PDFs everywhere around. So, is there a problem when PDFs are managed outside of STEP? What patterns can you see there?
And of course, you could argue that is the weakness of PDF is that once it's out of the system, it becomes out of sync, and so there is a problem of version drift. You can say that is an inherent weakness of the PDF format. Because data changes in STEP, but the PDF that is sitting in some file drive doesn't know about that. And that's where you might start to have different versions that floats around. So it really requires a lot of data discipline under normal circumstances. And then of course there is this thing about when someone made you something last month. So the drift of the PDF can still be considered as a weakness, but that's where you have the capability now of keeping it controlled and up to date in one location. And then of course the problem is the labor. If you don't have a system to generate the PDFs automatically, that can take time. But now we have some solutions for it.
So, actually, what you say that is that PDF should be treated as a governed channel, just like e-commerce or syndication.
Yeah, and I think with this new capabilities, I think that should be the mindset. Most organizations think of their e-commerce feed as a critical governed output from STEP, right? And they invest a lot in getting it right, but PDFs, are often still just treated as a manual side process in many cases. And the thing is, if you already have the data in STEP and you already have governance and you already have approvals, why wouldn't you extend that to your PDF output? The infrastructure is there. Now it's just really a matter of switching it on.
I think it's a clear story that you're bringing to the table here, Martin. So we have now discussed the PDF automation, the STEP publisher, as enabling PDF creation at scale, and we have discussed a few different use cases for it already. But I know that you have also been investigating some alternative use cases for it. Could you talk a bit about that as well?
Yes, sure, absolutely. So a few months ago, we at the unit of Measure launched a digital asset management add-on for STEP called Merix, where we focus on improving the full lifecycle processes of digital assets that come in and out of STEP. And one of the use cases for Merix is to offer a portal that organizations running STEP can set up, where, for instance, sales reps, store managers, and maybe customers can go to find and download digital assets that live in STEP. And we realized that as a natural extension of this, once you have such a portal set up, it would be valuable to offer a way for the users to be able to generate PDFs from STEP. And we could even think of taking one step further, because what if they could customize that PDF with their own input? And we found a way to leverage the PDF automation component in STEP Publisher to achieve this capability. So automated PDF generation solves, the standard documents, the ones that should always exist and always be up to date. But I believe that many organizations also need control flexibility sometimes, where users can generate variations of documents for specific and highly targeted use cases. And that's where our new component, the PDF on demand, comes in. From this new component, users can go in and select a predefined template, search and select products from STEP. And depending on how the template is designed, the user can input his own data to mix in with the content coming from STEP, and then generate a PDF on the fly. That could, for example, be a custom proposal or a price list based on approved product data in STEP that a sales rep generates, but maybe he needs some custom-specific prices that he provides then and there on the screen, and maybe he wants to insert the customer's own logo and maybe his own contact information in the PDF. So it basically allows you to personalize PDFs, but based on the latest approved product data and using only officially branded designs.
That is really an interesting evolution you're talking about. So when can customers expect to hear more about this, Martin?
We are actually launching this component next week, and this is the first time we speak about this in public. But if anyone is interested to learn more about this, please reach out to me by email, martin@unitofmeasure.com, or you can also follow the Unit of Measure company page on LinkedIn. And then, you will be notified when we announce more about this, which will be very soon.
So thanks, Martin. That's a great teaser, and I'm sure people will be keen to learn more when you're ready to share. We do have some time left for questions now, so let's open it up to the audience. I don't know, Guillaume, did you already see some questions?
No, there is no question in the Q&A section at all.
So let's give people a minute. Maybe one thing that I would like to know, is there a specific version that you need to run this for the automated PDF generation, Martin?
I think most Stibo customers would be, covered by this. You would need to be on at least 24.3, but there has been, updates and improvements since then. But that's the minimum requirement. Then, of course, you need the STEP Publisher, but that's pretty much it, and you will be ready to go. Yeah.
Okay, and does it? You already told talked about the multiple languages, so I assume it is a multiple language solution, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It understands how many, whatever languages that you have. It will automatically output the languages that you set up in the automation. So that's out of the box.
Okay. And do you need InDesign licenses for everyone?
No, that's not needed. So yeah, it works just as only the person producing the template needs an InDesign license, and all users of the tool can just use it from the web UI. So yeah, no additional licenses there.
Okay. So when there are no other questions, I think there we go. So I saw a question flashing by and another one. Hold on, I'm going into see if I can get and see
So
the
there is
questions.
two questions in the Q&A section. One from Anand, sorry for the pronunciation. Do you have, I think, a demo or any documentation on how it works?
So today we didn't prepare any specific demos. If there's a request to do that, then of course that's something we could set up. But then I think reach out, and then we could arrange for that. In terms of documentation, then I mean it is covered in the standard user documentation, where it is described under create datasheet. I think it's called in the documentation. So yeah, that's where that's sort of what I can refer to. But of course, I'm happy to take any follow-up conversations if people are more curious.
Yeah, and actually we have Stephanie who asked, can you please show some examples? So I think the best is for her to reach out and for Anand to reach out to you directly, so you can have a one-to-one conversation.
Yes, that's probably
The easiest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Feel free to do that.
Yeah. And for all the people on the call, I have put on the chat the contact of Martin. So you can reach out to him. You have his email and everything.
Okay. So let's wrap it up then. And thanks again, Martin. It's clear that there's a lot of untapped potential here for STEP customers. If there's one thing that stands out to me, it's how removing the production barrier really changes what's possible with PDFs, not just making things faster, but enabling entirely new use cases as well. So before we wrap up, what's the one key takeaway you'd like people to leave with?
Well, I think the key takeaway is that if you're using STEP Publisher, you already have everything you need to produce PDFs. The question is whether you are still treating PDF creation as a manual task, or whether you are using automation to remove that barrier entirely. And once that production barrier is gone, you don't just improve what you're already doing, but you unlock entirely new ways of using your product data. And I would encourage to reach out to your Stibo contact or to us at Unit of Measure if you'd like to explore what's possible in your specific setup. All environments are different, but the potential is almost always bigger than people expect. Yeah. So I guess any more questions? I don't think so. So maybe we should just wrap it up.
Yeah. So thanks to everybody, and special thanks, of course, to you, Martin, for sharing this with us.
It's a pleasure.
1 second. I see someone typing. Thank you. Oh, it's just to say thank you. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.